As a young child growing up in a single-parent home in Oakland, California, Verna McLean always felt that she could lean on her mother.
Her mom was the one that was the role model in her life. Her mom was the main focus of her life. They were very close.
But when Verna's mother and sister leave her behind to move to Houston, Texas, the now 23-year-old is fine with it. She's fallen for a man named Theo McLean, who whisks her away to San Diego, where for the next 4 years, she splits her time between raising children and being a nurse.
This woman was a nurse, so her job was to take care of people professionally, but she also took care of them personally, too. So certainly, this was someone who was giving, who was caring, who was a healer, really the salt of the earth.
And now, several years later, the 27-year-old's patience is wearing thin.
She was working over 60 hours a week.
She worked in nursing homes. She worked in child care facilities. The people that she worked with, everybody had great things to say about her.
But as much as Verna lives for taking care of people, her long hours are not born from a love of her job, but more out of necessity.
Her husband did not have a job. She was the breadwinner for the family. She had 3 children. She was the only one responsible for the kids. Without a doubt, she was tired of doing all of that.
One summer day, Verna reaches her breaking point and decides it's time for a change.
I'm out of here. I can't live like this, and neither is my child.
She tells her husband she's taking the kids to visit her mother and sister in Houston, Texas, and never looks back.
Verna may have decided to move looking for a better life, moving to a new city where perhaps she could meet new people and find the love of her life.
By all accounts, Verna was a very responsible person and a very nurturing person. When Verna moved to Texas, this was an opportunity to completely reinvent herself.
After setting herself and her kids up in her mother's home, Verna lands a job with a home health care service.
She ended up eventually working for a company that treated or cared for high-risk children.
Once Verna is settled in Houston, the scenery isn't the only thing that changes. A new city means it's also time for a new Verna. Long gone is the plain Jane nurse who lived for others.
You saw her become someone that she wasn't in San Diego. Makeup always done, hair always done. She started wearing wigs constantly. She became somebody she thought she wanted to be.
This was an opportunity to reinvent herself, to be what she always had wanted to be. This exciting woman, known for her looks, known for her beauty. And so she did everything in her power to create that image.
For the first time in her adult life, Verna isn't tied down to one man. So she plays the field with men she meets online, using them to fulfill her most basic desires.
Perhaps one man provided what she needed sexually. Perhaps another man provided what she needed romantically.
That allowed her to kind of become the Verna that she wanted to be.
Verna is soul-searching. Her father wasn't there. Her own home was broken in that her husband wasn't there for her emotionally. This is a woman who is searching for validation.
Despite her appetite for online dating, it's her work as a nurse that leads Verna to Andrew Manor, a handsome mama's boy with a heart of gold.
Andrew's niece had a trach in her throat. She had a problem where Verna had to take care of her.
Andrew was about 10 years younger than Verna. He was in his early 20s.
Verna's job puts her in Andrew's home all day, every day, and it's hard for her not to get enveloped into the close-knit family.
Andrew lived with his mom, lived with his brother, and that relationship kind of developed, not only with Andrew, but with Andrew's mother.
Almost immediately, Verna and Andrew take their attraction to the next level.
Verna was attracted to Andrew because he was much younger, he was impressionable, he was a good guy, that he could be easily controlled by Verna, who was much more mature and knew the ways of the world.
I think that what Verna saw in Andrew was someone who made her feel different than she felt when she was in San Diego, someone who made her feel more like a woman.
Verna also has the love and approval of Andrew's mother.
She's found stability. Things are going well with her family, things are going well with Andrew and his mother. They're showering her with affection. She feels special. She feels great. And she's not going to let anything come in the way of where she is right now, in the way of this happiness. Nothing.
But having all of her needs met isn't enough for Verna. She's worried that she might lose Andrew to a more desirable woman, one who's closer to his own age. She needs to ensure Andrew will be in her life forever, so she decides to tell him she's carrying his child.
Turns out I am pregnant.
Andrew was very excited to be a father. He was happy about it.
Speaks about pure emotion and desperation and doing whatever you have to do in order to keep your relationship alive.
Verna may have known enough about Andrew to know that if she told him she was pregnant, that he would stick around.
What Andrew doesn't know is that Verna is unable to give birth.
After the birth of Verna's third child, she got her tubes tied. She couldn't be pregnant, but that didn't stop her from saying that she was pregnant.
With a 9-month deadline in place, Verna must come up with a plan to ensure her future with the man she loves, or lose him forever.
When I think about what Verna McLean did, it haunts me to this day.
Verna was about to step out of her body for this man. It was scary what she did for him.
In Houston, Texas, Verna McLean is so enamored with her young paramour that she tells him she's pregnant, even though she is unable to have children after a previous surgery.
The reason she couldn't get out of the lie with Andrew was because she got her tubes tied.
But Andrew starts talking marriage.
Andrew was expecting to have a new son or daughter and was very excited about it.
Here's a situation, he has a stable woman, stable relationship, and he has a child that's on the way. And so it was easy for him to feed into all of the lies he was being fed by Verna, even if they were ridiculous lies.
He's also excited to share the news with the other woman in his life.
Andrew's mom and Andrew, they were so excited that they were going to have a baby with her and be a dad and be a grandma.
As the months progress, Verna continues to lie about her pregnancy, and Andrew and his mother fall for it hook, line, and sinker.
Verna would have been able to pull this off because she's a nurse, so she knows what's involved in being pregnant, and she's also a mother.
Verna had a heavier body build, so it would have made it easier for her to lie about the pregnancy.
She doesn't tell her own family about Andrew, so that she doesn't have to worry about perpetuating the lie at home.
It's obvious that Verna portrayed herself differently to different people and certainly compartmentalized various aspects of her life. She just didn't want the worlds to collide.
Around 3 months in, Verna's able to keep the deception going as far as Andrew is concerned. But as another woman who's given birth, fooling Andrew's mother isn't as easy.
Verna's future mother-in-law was questioning Verna about why Andrew or Andrew's mother couldn't go to Verna's doctor's appointments related to the pregnancy.
As she nears her fictitious second trimester, Verna tells Andrew and his mother that she's learned her pregnancy's at risk, and she must travel an hour southeast to Galveston to see a specialist. The latest ruse keeps them at bay for now.
Andrew didn't have a car. He had no way to get down there. His mom worked at the post office and was working all the time.
With each passing day bringing her closer to the 9-month mark, Verna finds herself at the point of no return.
It was easier for her at that point to just continue to say that I'm pregnant, and eventually she would figure something out.
If Verna faked a miscarriage for Andrew, then she was afraid that she just might lose him forever.
In addition to losing Andrew, she's also at risk for losing her job as a home care nurse. Verna has painted herself into a corner, and she sees only one way out.
She knew that she had to produce a baby to show Andrew. The only thing that came into her mind was to kidnap a child.
She comes up with a plan and sets it in motion. First, Verna comes up with a story to tell her own family, to explain why she may soon be coming home with a child.
Her family believed at any moment that Verna could become an emergency foster parent for a foster child. And it made complete sense. Verna was a nurse. Verna took care of children. And so nobody really ever questioned it.
Then, with only a week to go before the 9-month mark, Verna calls Andrew from her home in Houston to tell him she's in Galveston and has unexpectedly given birth to their child, knowing he will be unable to get down there right away.
She started sending him pictures of different children on Facebook. He was getting photographs of kids that he thought was his own little baby.
The photos do the trick, and Andrew promises to be patient until she and their child are discharged in a few days.
The love and the adoration that Andrew and his mother gave to Verna because they believed she was pregnant only fed her ego and only kept the lie going.
But Verna knows she's only bought herself so much time. She needs a baby, and she doesn't care who she has to harm to get one.
She goes and gets a gun. She goes and gets the bullets.
Verna did all of this for one reason, and that was to keep a man in her life.
And later, in Lake City, South Carolina, Shakita Jones puts her man's needs before her own, with fatal effect. Verna McLean's hot young boyfriend thinks she's just given birth to their son in Galveston. But she doesn't have a baby to show for it, and now she must kidnap one.
She had a goal in mind, and she was going to accomplish that goal, whatever it took.
And it takes getting a gun.
To get a gun in Texas, all you have to do is to have a clean record. They do a background check on you, fill out an application, and purchase the gun.
With her own car prone to breakdowns, Verna borrows her sister's car and drives to a pediatric clinic less than 2 miles from her sister's apartment in Houston.
It's a standalone location. It's not going to have the same safety standards as a hospital. It's going to be much easier to kidnap a child in the parking lot of a pediatric clinic than it is to whisk a baby away from a hospital.
Verna waits for hours, hoping someone shows up at the clinic with a newborn who fits the bill.
As Verna was sitting there watching these moms go back and forth, she had plenty of time to rethink this, to do something else. But I think she was just feeling so desperate that she had to do it.
Verna's patience pays off when she sees a young Caucasian woman pull up in a pickup truck.
She was trying to pass off the baby as someone who could be Andrew's baby, and so a white baby.
Kayla Golden Shookhart is at the clinic for a postnatal checkup with her 3-day-old son, Keegan.
Kayla was a 28-year-old mother of 3. She was a stay-at-home mom. She and her husband, Kevin, had been married for about 3 years.
Unfortunately for Kayla, she's walked into a hornet's nest.
And it was at that point that Verna knew exactly what she wanted and exactly who she needed to get it from.
Verna pulls into the empty parking space next to Kayla's and waits for her to return from her appointment. A little over an hour later, Kayla exits the clinic with Keegan.
Kayla's making her way to the pickup truck. When Verna sees Kayla, she's probably thinking it's now or never.
Verna rolled down the window, put her arm out. Kayla never saw Verna McLean. As Kayla's putting her child in the car seat, she's shot in the back 7 times.
But despite being mortally wounded, Kayla's not giving up her baby without a fight.
What you have is Verna taking baby Keegan, getting in the vehicle, and Kayla kind of struggling with her, still trying to get the baby as she falls to the side.
Verna speeds off and heads toward her sister's apartment.
For Verna to kill Kayla in broad daylight and snatch that baby, it speaks about being totally emotional to the point of pure desperation.
911 is flooded with calls from eyewitnesses to the crime as bystanders rush to Kayla's side.
Kayla was still alive when EMS responded and when law enforcement got there.
What she was telling the paramedics, other first responders, is what her baby was wearing. Her main concern was getting her baby back.
Kayla is loaded into an ambulance, but loses consciousness and slips away en route to the hospital.
She died protecting her kid. And that stuck with me then, it sticks with me now.
At the scene, concerned citizens provide the police with crucial details about the attack.
There were a lot of witnesses that were able to give us a description of the vehicle, and I believe of a license plate as well.
Law enforcement issues a be on the lookout for the car and plates described. Meanwhile, Verna stops at her sister's house to drop off the car and change out of her blood-spattered clothes. Then she calls Andrew's mother.
Verna called her and said, hey, I've got the baby, I'm in town. I need you to take me over to my mom's house. I'm at my sister's house. And so Andrew's mom wanted to see the baby and obliged.
Andrew's mother picks up Verna and her new grandson, unaware of the brutal murder and kidnapping that occurred just a few miles away.
And of course, Andrew's mother is so focused on the baby that she's completely oblivious to any nervousness that's coming from Verna.
Verna doesn't know that the local police have found her sister's car.
It was by complete happenstance. They're driving around looking, patrolling the area. They drive into this complex and decide to go down this perfect aisle and happen to see the Lexus.
The hood on the vehicle was still warm. The blood is smeared all over on the side.
Surrounded by doting grandmas at her mom's house, Verna has a moment of clarity and realizes by fleeing her sisters so fast, she's neglected to cover her tracks.
She's left the car with blood all over it, all the bloody clothes, the gun, her bloody cell phone, in her sister's apartment. And so it's at that point she goes to the scene.
But it's too late. Verna arrives to find the apartment complex swarming with law enforcement.
Verna came to the scene there saying she had heard about it on TV. And it's not the first time that a suspect would come back to the scene of the crime. It's almost cliche.
Verna tells police she knows nothing of the abduction but happened to find a baby on the steps of the apartment complex earlier that day. She took the baby to her mom's house until she could call authorities. But police know it's a tall tale.
Verna's story's not making sense because we obviously know that the child wasn't found on the steps, that the child's mother had been murdered. Police at this point have identified that vehicle that Verna used that had blood all over it, that had shell casings laying in the floorboard of the car.
As detectives on scene continue to talk to Verna, law enforcement are dispatched to her mother's house.
They go to the house, the Texas Rangers make entry into the home, and they find Kayla's child there.
The moment detectives at the apartment complex get word of baby Keegan's safe recovery, Verna's arrested for the kidnapping of 3-day-old Keegan Schuchart and the first-degree murder of his mother, Kayla.
The tragic part of this situation is that Kayla died not knowing whether or not her child was still alive, whether or not her child had been found.
Later that night, Andrew finds out what happened while watching the news. He rushes down to the jail to be by Verna's side.
For Andrew and his mother, this was an enormous betrayal because here was a woman that they trusted more than anything, that they treated like a queen, and to find out that she was a liar, she was a killer.
But despite the earth-shattering revelation, as Verna awaits her day in court, Andrew stands by his woman.
He still loved her. In his mind, he felt that she had murdered someone for him, that this whole thing was because of him. She did this for him.
It's fascinating how Verna just had a change of heart. Here she did all of these things for Andrew in her mind in order to please him, but at the end of the day, she now feels less than zero for him.
Even with his unconditional support, Verna lets Andrew go forever.
He came to the jail and visited her and talked to her for about a month. And after that, she cut off all ties with him.
It's really amazing how Verna's mind just flipped from really admiring and loving Andrew to not even caring about him and even kicking herself for doing something so horrific for his love.
Facing the death penalty, Verna takes a deal and pleads guilty in exchange for a sentence of life without the possibility of parole.
Verna McLean decided to accept responsibility. She's never going to get out.
But accepting responsibility in court and admitting it to herself are two entirely different things.
I don't know if Verna really saw beyond getting the baby. If she really saw, how am I going to pass this baby on as mine.
Andrew and his mother so trusted Verna, and to find out that she actually took another woman's life and tried to snatch a child must have been a situation where they were completely disillusioned. And how could they ever trust anyone like that again after the trust that they put into Verna?
Verna McLean was willing to do anything to keep her man, even if it meant taking someone else's life and kidnapping their baby. On the East Coast, Shakita Jones' desire for love will lead to deadly consequences. In Lake City, South Carolina, a young Shakita grows up on the wrong side of the tracks.
In that particular county where she was raised, you had neighborhoods that were really plagued with poverty and crime and things of that sort.
The reality of her surroundings does not bring the young teen down.
I think Shakita had that dream of wanting to be that individual that was a success. Her parents were not married. She was raised in a household with her grandmother and her mother.
The opposite sex starts taking notice when she's just a teen.
Shakita learned how to use what assets she knew to manage early on. She was looking for attention. It seemed like she used sex in order to get it.
Sex for Shakita served two purposes. For one, she grew up in an all-female home, and it provided her validation. And secondly, and more importantly, it was a real escape for her.
An escape Shakita indulges in all too often. And as she exits her teen years and enters adulthood, her dreams of getting out are dashed.
And so she ended up having 3 children by the age of 25 by 3 different males.
Shakita and her 3 children share a cramped home with her mother and grandmother.
Shakita didn't have a lot of funds, and therefore she was living under the support of the welfare system and also social services. Money was a major concern.
As a single parent with any number of children, having to work and care for them at the same time, that would be tough.
Unfortunately, when we look at this cycle of poverty, it happens all too much. In some neighborhoods, we see that with poverty, there is a lack of opportunity, a lack of education. So youngsters become involved in sex and other aimless sorts of activities, which then further drives them back into that cycle of poverty.
However, Shakita's circumstances are about to change with the arrival of a smooth-talking Romeo who promises to make all her dreams come true.
I think it's fair to say that she was desperate.
She loved him to the point where she was willing to do anything he wanted.
In the small town of Lake City, South Carolina, 28-year-old Shakita Jones seems destined to live a life of limited means.
She so desperately wanted to get out of poverty. She didn't want to live in a household with her mother, her grandmother, and her 3 children.
Money isn't the only thing missing from Shakita's life.
She wanted and was in search of love and that desire to be respected.
One of the few bright spots is Sunday worship with her grandmother.
When you have very little in this life, when there are things that are not physically tangible for you, this is where faith steps in. She didn't have satisfaction in her relationships. She didn't have the things that perhaps we all strive for in order to be comfortable. But one thing she had was her faith, and she showed that by attending church with her grandmother.
And it's at church one day where Shakita meets the handsome Jesse Cooper.
He comes into the church. In her eyes, it was like love at first sight. He stood out, gold teeth, a beautiful smile.
She's drawn into Jesse because he is the picture of success. He appears to be the guy that she always dreamt and fantasized about, the one who's going to lift her out of her poverty, out of her humdrum life, and carry her into the sunset with pure happiness.
In town to visit his grandparents, Jesse tells Shakita he's a hip-hop producer back in his hometown of Jacksonville, Florida.
He claimed to be really high in the industry and working with numerous artists, and he had everything to prove that this was the case. Really long gold chains, nice sneakers, a really nice SUV with shiny rims.
But what Chiquita doesn't know is that this choir boy carries a very dark tune. He's a cocaine user.
Jesse Cooper had a long criminal history, and there was no evidence that he ever held a stable job.
Jesse was dealing with Grand Theft Auto, and if you know about the video game, it's definitely not something that you want to play with.
For the next month, Jesse turns on the charm, romancing Chiquita while keeping his drug habit and illicit money-making activities in check.
Jesse treated Chiquita very well. Everything that she desired, he got for her. He was very nice to her 3 children. He was respectful to her. It was everything that she wanted. She was living on cloud 9.
And when after a month, Jesse has to go back home to Jacksonville, Chiquita's heartbroken. The two stay in touch over the phone, and it doesn't take long for Chiquita to take stock of her life, which now seems even less satisfying than before.
She thinks about it a little bit, stays in this same crowded home, and then decides after about 4 weeks, I'm out of here.
Driven by her desire, Chiquita loads the kids up and heads 300 miles south to Jacksonville.
Everything seemed to be perfect in her eyes. She's with the individual that she met in church, that she loved. It was great.
Once she arrives, Jesse welcomes Chiquita with open arms.
Jesse feels great. There's no doubt in Jesse's mind that she was going to come. It just was a matter of time. And so a month later, she's there.
That is, until Jesse's drug use comes to light.
What is this?
And when the mother of 3 learns he's not really a hip-hop producer,
I steal cars.
She makes a surprising decision.
Chiquita was not going to go back to the community she came from. And at that point, she decided, I'm going to support my man.
In her mind, Chiquita had a lot more to lose by leaving Jesse even after she found out about his cocaine habit. This is the guy who has been there with her, and so she is determined to make that relationship happen, even if it means exposing her children to a negative element.
Chiquita's found herself in a horrible situation. She has 3 children, and she's now living with a man that she realizes she knows nothing about.
Jesse Cooper probably saw that she was somewhat vulnerable, being a single parent, having 3 kids, would need somebody to support her.
Not wanting to return to a life of loneliness, Chiquita stays with Jesse. But after only a few weeks, when Chiquita can't find a job and her welfare checks are spreading thin, the family's need for money is at a constant. Jesse comes up with a plan. With Chiquita's 14-year-old daughter left at home in charge of her younger siblings, Jesse enlists Chiquita to drive him around to find cars to steal, and to serve as lookout while he boosts them.
By Jesse introducing Chiquita into his illicit life of crime by stealing cars, now he has a real partner.
Chiquita Jones was in love with Jesse Cooper. She wanted to be a part of what he was doing.
The lovers are suspected of a string of thefts in a short amount of time, creating a mini crime wave in the Jacksonville area that does not go unnoticed by authorities.
They're committing these crimes all in the same community. It's but so big. So you have a precinct that identifies this is a problem in this particular area, and so they send out the authorities to start looking.
Police are looking for known car thieves. Due to a past conviction for Grand Theft Auto, Jesse becomes a prime suspect and is brought in for questioning.
Jesse is aware that the officers don't have anything on him. He's aware that he's going in for questioning, and therefore he gives them what they want, and they allowed him to go home.
Jesse's been down this road before, so he knows what to do. For him, it's just about deny, 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 deny. Because if they had something on him, they would have gotten him already.
When Jesse finally goes home after the questioning, Chiquita's excited, of course, because she just wants her man at the end of the day. But it changes a lot for them in terms of the crimes that they're committing.
Shakita can't imagine life without Jesse, so she's willing to do whatever it takes to keep him out of the radar of law enforcement.
With Jesse now on the police's radar, Shakita thinks it's too risky for them to keep stealing cars.
If you steal a car, you have to sell the car to someone who will give you cash, and someone who's also willing to take on a stolen car, knowing that we'll change the license plate so you don't get arrested.
Shakita's using her brain, and she decides, maybe we need to change things up a bit.
Shakita suggests they should go for a straight cash grab by holding up a business.
When Shakita comes up with this plan, this is clear evidence to Jesse that she's fit for this lifestyle, that she's built for this.
Jesse is all for it. And his approval signals the start of a chain of events that will end with one dead and the other behind bars.
She wanted to prove herself. She wanted Jesse to know that she would be by his side for a lifetime.
This was the beginning to the final chapter of Shakita Jones' life.
In Jacksonville, Florida, 28-year-old mother of three, Shakita Jones, has decided that the best way to support herself, her kids, and her boyfriend, Jesse Cooper, is to commit armed robbery.
It's quick and easy in a way that stealing something else isn't.
Shakita realizes that if she doesn't get involved in this life of crime with Jesse, that she could lose him. She can lose this dream relationship. So in her mind, she has no choice.
Shakita proposes the two rob a gas station with a food mart.
There's a lot more revenue that's coming there as opposed to a gas station where you're just coming in and pumping gas and leaving. And so she really had decided at that point that it was all about getting more and more money.
Jesse convinces Shakita the next step is for her to canvass the area, to find a gas station that looks busy enough to be worth the risk.
Shakita ends up being the eyes and the ears of the streets for Jesse.
He valued her as a criminal conspirator. You need to trust the people you're committing crimes with. I don't know if he loved her or if he was just using her to commit crimes, but clearly he knew her well enough to know he could trust her.
After driving around some of Jacksonville's busiest areas, Shakita thinks she's found their target in a local gas station.
This particular chain of gas stations is very big in Jacksonville, so I think they had a good idea that the money drop would be a large dollar figure.
For the next several days, she stakes it out from a safe distance.
Shakita Jones was casing the Gate gas station, parking either in or near the store, and waiting for the manager to exit the store and then following him through his rounds until he got to the bank.
From this particular location, Shakita has a clear view of everything that's happening inside the gas station.
But what Shakita doesn't know is while she's been watching the gas station, someone else has been watching her.
There had been a rash of recent robberies at this particular gas station chain, and that's why the sheriff's office was out there in the first place, surveilling the areas.
Shakita was so caught up in the robbery that she was planning that she didn't realize that she stuck out like a sore thumb. She was establishing a pattern in her trying to assess the situation, monitor the situation there.
After 2 more days of monitoring activity in and around the gas station, Shakita decides it's time.
Because of the surveillances that Shakita did, she's fully aware that the store manager leaves at 10 a.m. in order to go make this big deposit.
While Shakita sits in her vehicle across the street, Jesse parks in the gas station lot, out of sight from the mini-mart entrance.
And at the particular time, it's about 9 a.m., which means that in 1 hour, the store manager will be leaving with all of that cash.
Jesse Cooper would be in a position hidden from the front of the store, and she would communicate by phone as to when the manager was coming out.
The plan was to walk up with a gun and rob the guy in the parking lot.
When Shakita finally sees the store manager coming out, she cues Jesse.
Jesse hangs up the phone and makes his move as Chiquita watches on.
He pulled a gun on him, demanded the money, and the employee handed it over to him.
Give me the bread, bro.
Everything seems to go off without a hitch.
After the robbery, he returned to his car. He got in.
But suddenly, 2 unmarked police cars pull into the gas station and block Jesse.
The police cut him off. They got out of their car. They raised firearms to him, told him to put his hands up, and rather than put his hands up, he brought up a firearm.
28-year-old single mother Chiquita Jones and her boyfriend Jesse Cooper came up with what they thought was a foolproof scheme to rob a gas station in Jacksonville, Florida, only to have their plan go spectacularly wrong.
As he was preparing to leave the parking lot, the police cut him off. They got out of their car, they raised firearms to him, told him to put his hands up, and rather than put his hands up, he brought up a firearm. And then the police opened fire.
Jesse is shot multiple times, and he dies immediately.
Watching her boyfriend being gunned down by the police and knowing it was her plan, Chiquita is in shock, she's in disbelief, but eventually goes into the mode of guilt.
But just as she starts her car, the authorities who've been keeping an eye on her move in. Chiquita is arrested without incident.
When it comes time to protect her own skin, that's exactly what she does. It becomes all about her and not about Jesse.
At the police station, Chiquita pleads ignorance, claiming Jesse never told her he planned on robbing the gas station.
Chiquita can't see life without Jesse. This is something that she just can't do. So she'll do whatever it takes to make sure that she stays out of the radar of law enforcement.
Chiquita is indicted, and not only for the robbery. In a shocking turn of events, she is also charged with the murder of Jesse Cooper.
Under Florida law, if anyone dies in the commission of a crime, the people who were involved in the crime are responsible for that person's death. Therefore, prosecutors argued she was responsible for the murder of Jesse Cooper.
This has to be devastating for Chiquita. The man that she loves is gunned down, and it's because of a plot that she came up with, a faulty one at that. But now, law enforcement, the legal system, turns around and they charge her with the murder. So not only does she have to deal with the guilt of this personally, but also take the full brunt legally.
8 months after the robbery gone wrong, Chiquita pleads not guilty to all counts. She takes the stand during her trial. And when questioned about a 53-minute phone conversation with Jesse in the minutes leading up to the robbery, she has an answer at the ready.
She came up with an account that the reason that she and her boyfriend were on the phone was simply to have phone sex.
Chiquita identified that she didn't even have a clue that he was across from her or at a gas station committing or doing anything.
But with law enforcement tracking Chiquita's moves outside the gas station days before the robbery, the jury doesn't buy it. Chiquita Jones is found guilty of armed robbery and second-degree felony murder. She is sentenced to 35 years.
What the court saw from her were excuses, no reasons, and a lack of sympathy for what she had done. She was responsible for someone's death. In this case, it was somebody that she knew and probably loved.
Chiquita loved Jesse. Jesse loved Chiquita. But it was built on lies, not on the side of Chiquita, but on the side of Jesse. And although the love was strong, it was a lie, and therefore it was bound to fail from the start.
It was obviously a destructive love. We can sit here and say, what were you thinking? But she loved him, and she wanted to be with him, and she wanted to be part of his life. Unfortunately, that ended up destroying her own life.
He ended up dying. She ended up being in prison, and now her life is virtually over.